Well, it appears that Oneil Cruz could be playing some winter baseball. What does that mean for him in 2024, as well as the Pirates making a few transactions on Monday and the pitching market setting itself? We're going to talk about that and more on today's episode of Locked On Pirates.
You are Locked On Pirates, your daily Pittsburgh Pirates podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Back, everybody, to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. My name is Ethan Smith, your host of this wonderful show here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where, of course, we talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates and everything that they do, especially even in the middle of November, where we're starting to get some things that are happening. Not a lot of stuff has happened so far in the Pirates offseason, and to be quite honest, not a lot of stuff has happened in the offseason period, really, so far, but there are some noteworthy things that I think we should talk about that make sense for this Pittsburgh Pirates team. And to start off today's show, I wanted to start with talking about Oneil Cruz, who, we lost Oneil Cruz early in 2023 to an unfortunate injury with his leg that sidelined him for the remainder of the 2023 campaign. He never came back. There was parts of the season where it looked like he might come back, and then there was other parts where he would have setbacks, and then it ultimately just ran out of time, I would say. He ran out of time to come back, and it was never going to, sadly, be anything that he was going to be able to come back from in this calendar year. So now you move forward, and I talked about it a lot during the season and even now about Oneil Cruz for the idea that he would possibly play winter ball. It was something that I thought would be very fun for him to do. And according to Janssen Pujols, the Pirates have granted Oneil Cruz permission to play for the LIDOM Tigres del Licey. Not 100% confirmed. We have nothing really to say that it is definitely happening. But I would say that with it being reported and rumored, it is probably going to happen. And this is very good news, not only for Oneil Cruz, but for the Pittsburgh Pirates as well. Because if he can play some winter ball this offseason, folks, and, get back up to speed, I don't think we need to expect anything out of Oneil Cruz while he's doing this. I don't think there's really any big expectation that you have to have for him. But I think the most important thing for Oneil Cruz here is that he gets back up to speed with baseball. He gets healthy. He starts swinging the bat again in game. He starts seeing pitches in game again. And then by the time he comes to spring training is more of just a ramp up for him, just like it'll be for everybody else, rather than him still trying to catch back up to speed and really not get to that point until later in the year in 2024, which is not what we need, because Oneil Cruz, of course, is one of the more integral parts of this Pittsburgh Pirates team and them wanting to be successful going into next year. And I think that that's something that's going to work out for this team. I think it's something that for the Pittsburgh Pirates you have to look at and consider. And you obviously know that if he is playing winter ball this offseason, they're going to closely monitor it. It's something that they're going to want to keep him happy. They're going to want to keep him healthy, but they're also going to want him to go out and actually play. They want him to go out and play. It's something that he needs to do. It's something that I think the Pirates feel he needs to do. And I would hope that we get some fun highlights of him throughout the offseason. It's something that I'll obviously be looking at on the social media platforms to see if he's doing well where he's playing. And we've seen already that Luis Ortiz has been pitching this winter. Osvaldo Bido, who we're going to talk about actually in the next segment, was another person that we were thinking would possibly pitch this winter. And there's a lot of guys who could play this winter as well. You have Jace Bowen. You have all of these young guys that want to keep continuing to play baseball through the winter and keep getting better. And I think that's really what Oneil Cruz wants to do here, folks, is he wants to continue to get better at the game of baseball. He wants to be the generational player that he could potentially be. He wants to be a star for this Pittsburgh Pirates team, and he wants to help this team win. And I think this is a great start for him. I think it's something that the Pittsburgh Pirates are obviously going to consider. And if it is true, which I do expect it to be with it being reported, how important is it? I think it might be one of the more important notes of the offseason for this Pittsburgh Pirates team to get Oneil Cruz in some game action, get him swinging the bat again, getting him to play shortstop defensively over there, and really just getting him back to square one. Because when you have an injury like Oneil Cruz had, a lot of players really at that point, the biggest struggle they have is just going back to basics. That's usually the biggest struggle that a lot of these guys are going to deal with. And I think it's something for Oneil Cruz that getting back to basics is going to be possibly difficult for him in the early going while he's doing this, and even maybe going into next season. But it's better for him to start earlier, get some in-game action, and if the Pirates see anything wrong, they're going to pull him out of it. They're not going to let him just go willy-nilly and play as much as he wants because, again, he's coming off of a severe leg injury that if he was to mess it up again and have another setback, then you're talking about a lot of different things. And I enjoy this for Oneil Cruz, but I will also say to all of you and anybody who wants to possibly watch or just sees what he's doing, the stats won't matter. I don't think the stats will matter all that much for what he does down there. I don't think a lot of the things that home runs and batting average and OPS that we would normally look at, I just don't think those things are going to matter all that much, folks. I really don't. And for Oneil Cruz, this is good news. It means that he is at least nearing 100%. The Pirates feel comfortable enough with him playing to where he might be going to go play. And this is just good news because we were wondering, okay, where is he in his rehab process? That was the biggest question that we had throughout the entire season is where is Oneil Cruz in his rehab process? How far along is he? How does he look? Is he running drills again? Is he fielding ground balls? Is he hitting? We were seeing some of that in September after it was announced that they were shutting him down for the year. But even going into the offseason, we wondered, okay, where is he at now? Could he possibly play winter ball? Could he do a lot of offseason workouts and get back up to speed so that when he shows up to spring training, he's the Oneil Cruz that we expect him to be, if not better? Because I think at this point going into 2024, if Oneil Cruz is healthy and ready to go, the expectations for him have to be higher than ever, folks. I really think we have to think about it that way. And this is a good start for him as well. It's a good start for the Pittsburgh Pirates to see one of their top players getting back in game action, hopefully. And I'm excited for what 2024 has to offer for Oneil Cruz and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Before we talk about the Pirates adding an outfielder from the Twins and losing two pitchers to the A's and Yankees respectively, let's talk about FanDuel. Folks, FanDuel Sportsbook is your one-stop shop for all of your sports betting this offseason. You can check out FanDuel at FanDuel.com/lockedon for all of your bets because you could score early this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any $5 winning moneyline bet. That's $150 if your team wins. And if you've been thinking about joining FanDuel, there's no better time to get in on the action. The app is super easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options that include spreads, player props, over-unders, same-game parlays, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the second half of the NFL season today because FanDuel is an official partner of the NFL and an official sponsor of the Locked On Pirates podcast. Alrighty, folks, and welcome back to the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. And folks, by the way, Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On Plus, our national shows covering every league. Go to Locked On Sports Today on YouTube and subscribe to the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel. And guys, here in segment 2, we're going to talk about some actual transactions that happened for the Pittsburgh Pirates in the offseason. The first, of course, of the 3 that happened on Monday was Gilberto Celestino signing a minor league deal with the Pittsburgh Pirates. Of course, this was broken by Jason Mackey of the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. And you would assume that Celestino will probably get a major league spring training camp invite. I would say that that is something. Now, he turns 25 in February. Not much to say, really, about Celestino. Very young player, has only been in the league for about 2 seasons, suffered an ACL tear in his left thumb in 2023 and underwent surgery in March. Obviously came back around the middle of June is when he was back with the Minnesota Twins, and he played 55 AAA games, hit 4 home runs, and you guys know, and I'm going to lean into the camera and say it, I love it because he walked more than he struck out. One of my favorite things that I always love to hear and see about a player at the major league level. If you're getting on base via the walk more than you strike out, I'm going to like you a little bit. But outside of that, he did have the unusual batting line of a 243 average, a 392 on base percentage, a 389 slugging, and a WRC plus of 106. And he was outrighted, obviously, off the roster in October, able to elect free agency. That's really the whole deal. And then you also look at other fun notes with him. He's an international amateur signing of the Houston Astros. Eventually ended up with the Minnesota Twins via the Ryan Presley trade. So he was a part of that trade, which has obviously worked out for the Houston Astros, I'd say, more than the Minnesota Twins. And he has 409 major league plate appearances from 2021 to 2022. Slashes 222, 292, and 300 in that work. Obviously, his AAA work a little bit more impressive. I would say Celestino is definitely kind of that quad A player that we think about. In his AAA time, he slashed 261, 385, and 408 at that level over the course of 3 seasons. And I was asked after I tweeted about it and everything what his role would be. I think it's probably just a depth, like a outfield depth option. Can't say the word depth today, apparently. But I would say that's probably what he's going to end up being. You look at what the outfield has to offer right now. You have Brian Reynolds, you have Jack Sawinski, Joshua Palacios, Ji-Hwan Bae. Maybe they still want to think Henry Davis can play that position. I just don't really think he can do it. You also have the possibility of Canaan Smith and Jigba being another option there as well. And we've seen also defensively, Celestino can play all 3 outfield spots. So that's something that could be valuable to this team moving forward. And we'll see what he could do. I think he could work himself into a 4th outfielder spot at best. We'll see what happens there. But again, he's still a very young player. Haven't really seen much from him, but the positives are that he's a very adequate defender. He can play all 3 outfield spots defensively. He walks very well. He can get on base via the walk. He doesn't strike out all that often. So I think that's something that you can look forward to. But again, not anything that's going to really change what this team is going to look like next season. But nevertheless, a young flyer option that if he can figure out how to hit the baseball a little bit better and keep that adequate defense that he brings in the outfield, could end up being a pretty big thing for this Pittsburgh Pirates team. The next one, of course, was one that threw some of us off guard a little bit, and that was Osvaldo Bido, who obviously the Pirates outrighted and did not elect to keep. And he ended up going to the Oakland / I guess now Las Vegas Athletics yesterday. Obviously, Osvaldo Bido was a riser through the system, late bloomer, already at the age of 28, did not have the greatest 2023, went 2-5 with a 5.86 ERA over 50 innings and a 1.5 WHIP with only 48 strikeouts. Pitched more in the minor leagues this season than he did last year. And there was the hope that Beto, especially with the pitching issues that the Pittsburgh Pirates had and have, that he would eventually come back to that mold that we saw. Because when you look at what he did in the minor leagues, folks, I mean, you look at 2019, had a 3.32 ERA, had a 4.53 ERA in 2022, where he did very well in Indianapolis, had that strikeout ball working with 122 strikeouts to 64 walks. And that was always one of his bigger issues, was his command, is the walks were just never really there for him. Or the strikeouts were never really there for him. And this year he only had 48 strikeouts to 21 walks on the season in 16 games and 9 starts. Eventually ended up even being a bullpen option for this team, which was just something that none of us really thought would happen with him after what we saw from him in the minor league level, and then the little bit that we saw from him at the major league level before he eventually came up. Now, you look at what Beto will offer for the Athletics, don't really know. The Athletics are an interesting team right now. They have a lot of stuff going on and a lot of things that I think they're going to have to worry about moving forward. So we'll see how Osvaldo Beto does over in Oakland and Las Vegas. We'll see if he can maybe have better success elsewhere, but that's basically that news. I mean, it's another pitcher that the Pirates thought was going to pan out that didn't, and that's where we're at right now. The other move, excuse me, was Yuri De Los Santos, which this one also kind of threw me off guard a little bit as well. De Los Santos, of course, signed by the New York Yankees, had 22 games in 2023, a 3.33 ERA over those 24 and 1/3 innings, 18 strikeouts, and a 1.23 WHIP. De Los Santos, obviously, much younger than Osvaldo Beto, much younger than about the age range of the outfielder that they acquired. And this is interesting, too, because, I mean, in his time in Pittsburgh, I won't say he was like a very, very good reliever, but he was at least an adequate reliever for this Pittsburgh Pirates team and did some pretty decent things. I mean, again, he had a 4.91 ERA in 2022 in 26 games, a 3.33 ERA this season. So he's a career about 4 ERA guy, only giving up about a 2.10 average to opposing hitters, has a 1.26 WHIP, has 44 strikeouts to 24 walks on his career. And the immediate reaction to this was, well, are the Yankees going to fix him? Is it going to be another Clay Holmes deal? And we'll see. I mean, Yuri De Los Santos has some stuff to offer. I think he eventually could come into his own. But I do think the Pirates, as far as their bullpen options go and the amount of pitchers that we're going to see come through this minor league system in 2024 and 2025, I do think that it gets really interesting with who they decide to keep and who they don't, because you see that they the Cody Boltons of the world and the Jared Joneses of the world and the Mike Burrows of the world and Anthony Solometto. You're going to have a lot of these guys coming up, and Paul Skeens. So where do a lot of these guys eventually fit? I think that's the biggest question that you have to ask. And it is unfortunate because I really liked De Los Santos. I thought that he was going to end up being a pretty adequate piece to what this Pirates bullpen was eventually going to turn into. And he's a New York Yankee now. And I think the Yankees are getting a very good young reliever that for them will probably be much more of a depth option than what he would have been with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And that's the moves that have happened over the course of 24 hours for this team. Obviously, it's a start to the offseason, and I expect that we'll see more moving forward. But yeah, the Pirates bring in Celestino from the Minnesota Twins, some outfield depth. Osvaldo Beto heads to Oakland/Las Vegas to go play for the Athletics. Yuri De Los Santos is a New York Yankee. So some things are starting to happen, folks. And other things that are starting to happen, pitching market. Aaron Nola back to the Philadelphia Phillies. Lance Lynn back to the St. Louis Cardinals. So is the pitching market starting to set itself a little bit, and how do the Pirates fit into that mold? We'll talk about that here in just a moment. Alrighty, everybody, and welcome back to the final segment of today's episode of Locked On Pirates here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. As I mentioned on Twitter yesterday, I do have a surprise for you guys later today that I think you'll enjoy with another episode, so that'll be coming out later in the evening. And, of course, we have today's episode where we're wrapping up talking about the pitching market, because we knew that the pitching market was going to be something that the Pirates were going to keep their eyes on for probably the entire offseason for the most part, as they should. Mitch Keller is your main guy right now. There still has not been much to come out from about Johan Oviedo and what injury he's dealing with, but there are some rumors that he will end up having Tommy John surgery and could be out for the 2024 season, which puts an even further emphasis on what the Pirates need to do this offseason with building a rotation pretty much from scratch. And we've already seen three big moves, I'd say, from the pitching market so far. Obviously, you have Lynn headed to St. Louis. Aaron Nola was extended by the Philadelphia Phillies. He was a free agent, but I say extended because he was already a Philadelphia Philly. So he signed his major deal, and then Reynaldo Lopez headed to the Atlanta Braves. And these deals are interesting, folks, because you look up and down at what's going on here. Lynn, to start off with, has a $10 million deal on 1 year. Aaron Nola signed a massive extension. I believe it was 7 years, $172 million. And then Reynaldo Lopez signed a 3-year, $30 million deal. And I think it's very interesting that when you boil it all down, the pitching market, it's going to be competitive, folks. And for this Pittsburgh Pirates team who desperately needs pitching, I do think that judging these contracts is not the be-all, end-all of what the Pirates are going to be able to go after. But I think when you look at these contracts that are being signed already and seeing the money figures, you look at some of the guys that you want the Pirates to go get, like that I would like the Pirates to go after, like a Eduardo Rodriguez, like a Dylan Cease potentially. We haven't really seen we've seen trades. The Royals and the Braves made some pitching trades, but I do think that it might be worth their time to do more work in the trade market than it might be the free agent market, because some of these deals might get up there, folks. Like Eduardo Rodriguez, based off of how good he is and some deals we've seen already, I wouldn't be shocked to see if he got $22 million annually. It would not surprise me at all. And Martin Perez, even a guy who did it very well in 2022 and ended up being kind of an afterthought for the Rangers in 2023, still a very good pitcher. I could see him getting in upwards of $15 million because teams are clearly in the market for pitching. They know they want pitching, and the Pirates are going to be right in the thick of it. So what does this mean now for how the Pirates are going to fit into all this? Well, I do think that we have to wait at least just a little bit longer to see what ends up happening for the Pittsburgh Pirates and see what the pitching market does, because all of this can change. And when you look at what happens for the Pittsburgh Pirates moving forward this offseason with pitching specifically, don't overpay is what I would say. Now, overpaying on 1 year, like Lynn going to the Cardinals on a 1 year, $10 million contract, whatever, that's fine. But I would look more at the Reynaldo Lopez one, because 3 years, $30 million for a guy that has had questions as a starter, has been a better option as a reliever. 3 years, $30 million for the Braves, they can afford that contract. Now, if you were the Pittsburgh Pirates and they were to give him that kind of deal with 3 years, $30 million, you're hoping he becomes a starter, because the Pirates probably don't want to spend $10 million on a bullpen arm, especially a bullpen that features one of the top closers in baseball and David Bednar and other complementary pieces that are very good. They need starters right now, and I don't think they can really afford to go after guys that have so many question marks around them. They need starters. Bullpen, yeah, We can worry about that later. But at this current juncture, starting pitching is their biggest need. And when you're looking at how they're going to fit into all this, I really do think that a lot of it's just going to boil down to who Ben Cherington and the front office want, offering a contract. And if a bidding war happens, if they want him that badly, they'll overpay a little bit. And I think that's what their plan and their game plan for the offseason is going to be. And that's what it should be. Now, obviously, we know you have guys like Paul Skeens, you have guys like Jared Jones waiting in the wings, but they're not going to be ready for opening day, folks. They're not going to be able to get this team off to a good start in the rotation. So not only are you having to go out and find arms, but you're having to find arms that you're also putting a lot of pressure on immediately. You're putting pressure on these guys to be good behind Mitch Keller almost immediately, folks. And that's something that for the Pittsburgh Pirates could end up being something that works out for them in their favor, or it could be something that works out for them to the point where we're at now. And the bet is made. They have delay in it. But the pitching market's starting to heat up a little bit. I mean, you see Aaron Nola go off the market. He was a projected guy that a lot of people thought he might head to Atlanta or he might head to one of those big spots. Reynaldo Lopez is another guy that was going to always have interest among the top teams, and Atlanta ended up being that team. We know the Cardinals in division are going to want to go get starting pitching. They already got one. They've already expressed interest in getting multiple. What do the Milwaukee Brewers do now that Brandon Woodruff is no longer on the roster? Do they go out and get more pitching? Do the Chicago Cubs in the division go out and get more pitching? We know the Cincinnati Reds probably want to get more pitching to complement all of the young stars that they have on offense right now. The whole division wants pitching. Outside of the division, the Padres are going to probably want pitching. You've already heard about the Yankees and the Mets wanting Yoshinobu Yamamoto. Pitching is going to be massively sought out for this offseason, as it usually is. And the Pittsburgh Pirates are going to have to do their due diligence to try to make sure that they fill their own holes as well. And if they do, 2024 could be really fun. If they don't, and they sit idly by and let these other teams get most of the prospects, it's going to be an interesting 2024 at that point. But guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Locked On Pirates podcast here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team, your Pittsburgh Pirates every day. My name is Ethan Smith. Make sure you check me out on Twitter at MVP_Ethan or at Locked On Pirates for all of your news, analysis, reactions, and opinions on everything in the world of the Pittsburgh Pirates. And please go check out the Locked On Sports Today live stream channel, your first 24/7 sports coverage channel on YouTube. Guys, thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your Tuesday afternoon. I'll see you later, by the way, because we're going to have some fun later with a little surprise for you guys. So thank you so much, and I'll see you on the flip side.